I believe we should be going live right now. I'm waiting for it to show up on YouTube. Welcome back, everybody, to another round of Caps Friends. I feel like we're getting less people each time. Like with WandaVision, it felt like more and more people were excited to join us each week because they were also watching it. Whereas it feels like now, I feel like we're losing people. I mean, it could be us. I feel like it's the show, not us, though. Uh,
I'm going with it's the show, not us.
anyway, welcome back. We are here to talk about episode 3,
3, yes.
Power Broker.
All right, and now it's my week to tell you what happened this week. And we actually start with an almost like WandaVision-esque commercial. But this is for the Global Repatriation Council. So it's a light spot of propaganda that explains what they do. And it's, according to them, helping people back into their homes and jobs and navigating the changes to society, in laws and borders. So we go from that commercial to a police van branded with the GRC's logo. So immediately you're like,
Okay.
this story ain't right. Yeah. And this police van is like pulling up, and Captain Fomerica is inside, and he gets out of the van and like bursts into the internet cafe in Munich where Carly and the Flag Smashers were housed in the last episode. So the owner of the business like refuses to answer fake Cap's questions, and he spits in Cap's face, causing fake Cap to lash out violently. Another one of those moments where you're watching and you're like, "You're not Captain America."
Steve Rogers would never.
And so he's demanding to know if the business owner, like, do you know who I am? And the guy says, yeah, I know who you are, but I don't care. Which same, bro. Like big same.
Mm-hmm.
Fake Cap's partner Lamar, whose name I totally had to look up and did not actually remember, points out that Carly is giving displaced people shelter and medicine, which means people aren't likely to rat her out. And Fake Cap sighs and says they've got to bet on somebody with a better hand. And this segue magics us over to Sam and Bucky, who are visiting Zemo in prison. Bucky convinces Sam to let him go into the cell alone since Sam is an Avenger and Zemo hates Avengers. Zemo gets straight into messing with Bucky's mind, but Bucky is straight to business and tells him that someone has recreated the super soldier serum and they need Zemo's help. We cut to Sam freaking out as Bucky proposes his new plan of basically breaking Zemo out of prison, as he shares how he would hypothetically go about this jailbreak. We watch as it actually, just orchestrate this jailbreak. Here is how one would do it. And we're actually watching it happen, and Zemo uses an inmate fight as a distraction to break out of jail. He meets up with Sam and Bucky at his family's garage because he is in fact rich and was basically Sokovian royalty. And he tells them that what they need to do now is meet this mid-level fence named Selby, and that's their first stop. They get to her using Zemo's private plane, and Zemo keeps messing with Bucky, this time stealing his little notebook, which we get confirmed that Cap gave him. It's the notebook that Cap was writing all his like pop culture stuff in back in the day. And that now has Bucky's like list of people he needs to do right by. Zemo also gives us like this big thesis statement moment about the danger with heroes. And it's that we put them on pedestals and they become symbols and icons, and we start to forget about their flaws. Meanwhile, we get a humanizing moment with Carly as she stops by a GRC resettlement camp, which again, anytime you have a camp involved, like bad things are
Bad. Yeah,
happening.
it's you're not
Yeah,
you're not the
unless
good. You're
it's a
not the
summer
good. You're
camp.
yeah. If that camp is anything other than a summer camp, you are not the good guys. Like I don't know. Uh,
And I include outside camping because I'm that
that's
person. I'm
correct.
like,
If you are outside, if your camp is is like a tent in like in the woods,
mm.
you're not the good guys. Also, statement stands.
This is how we lose viewers, Nicole. It's not the
Uh,
show, it's
these
us.
are these are the hot takes that we're choosing to.
So Carly has a moment. She's like playing with little kids, and then she goes up to visit the deathbed of an older woman, and she cries next to this person as she's dying. The boys arrive in Madripoor, and Bucky is acting like the Winter Soldier, Zemo is himself, and Sam is impersonating a man named the Smiling Tiger. At a bar, Zemo asks to speak to Selby, and Bucky has to beat up a bunch of patrons because of reasons before Selby agrees to see them. Zemo pretends he's here to make a deal, information for the Winter Soldier. Selby shares with them that Dr. Nagel is responsible for the new super soldier serum, but then their cover is blown when Sam gets a call from his sister. He puts it on, he didn't turn off his phone, I don't know, before going undercover. So you're bad, Sam. Just as Selby orders her henchmen to kill the boys, some unseen person snipers Selby dead. The boys run, but there is immediately a bounty placed on them for this death, and people start shooting at them, but their unseen helper strikes again and shoots a bunch of people for them before revealing herself as Sharon Carter. She's real mad to see Zemo. So Sam quickly explains what they are doing, and he asks what she's doing in Madripoor, and she reminds him that she was on the law-breaking side of Civil War, but wasn't an Avenger, so she didn't get a pardon. So she's hiding out in Madripoor, where they don't have extradition laws. She's real salty about this. I mean, as she should be.
As she should be, because she's
uh,
literally the only one on the law breaking side who wasn't an Avenger. So
uh-huh.
yeah, we're gonna I have a lot to say about Sharon. So
But she still offers to help them. Sharon shares her version of the big thesis statement, saying that the hero thing is all hypocrisy and something that she thinks Sam must know since he gave up the shield. Sam says that he'll help Sharon get pardoned if she helps them with this whole super soldier thing that they're investigating. So Sharon is hosting a party. And presumably during this party, she uses her connection to find Dr. Nagel. The next morning, she leads them to a shipyard. Inside one of the containers, they find Dr. Nagel's secret lab, and Nagel shares that he was given the blood of an American super soldier, presumably Isaiah Bradley, and from there he was able to recreate the serum in a more low-key version, which means that whoever takes the serum doesn't get like super buff, they just get super strong, so they just look like themselves. And he blipped out before he could complete his work. But when he came back, the big bad of Madripoor, the power broker, whom this episode is named after, offered to keep funding his work. He made 20 vials of the stuff, but they were all stolen by Carly in this flag smasher, which is why the power broker is after her. Zemo kills Nagel, and Sam and Bucky are like, what the hell? As this interrogation...
everything that he has said up to this point, I am mostly just surprised that they are surprised. Like,
yes.
obviously, like everything that this man just said was, I'm the only one who knows how to do this thing. So he was like, cool,
yes.
bang, like that is duh.
And
Obviously, that's what Zemo's gonna do. Like,
also, Zemo has been like, I will not let the super soldier thing, I will complete my mission.
Right. And he's demonstrated that he's really big on like murdering anybody to complete his mission.
Yes.
The fact that they were immediately, the second that man revealed himself to be the only person in possession of this knowledge, the fact that they didn't immediately go, oh no, your life is in danger right now.
Yeah. There's no reason they should be surprised, but they were both like, hey, we did not expect that.
Harsh, sudden but inevitable betrayal.
Yes. As this interrogation is happening, a bunch of bounty hunters arrive at the shipyard, and in an extended sequence, Sharon fights them off. One bounty hunter shoots an RPG into the container, destroying the lab, though our boys make it out alive. They keep fighting their way out, and Zemo steals a car. Sam tells Sharon to come with them back to the US, but she says no, she'll be waiting here in her life of crime until she gets her pardon. We get a brief look at Fake Cap and his partner still investigating, having figured out that Sam and Bucky broke Zemo out of jail. And then we go back to Carly talking with someone else from the Flag Smashers about how she wanted to be a teacher and now her life sucks. Later that night, the Smashers steal a bunch of supplies that were being hoarded and kept from those in the camps. They have all of the security guards tied up in a building, and as they leave, an explosion goes off. Carly's partner is also like, what the hell? Because she just killed those people, but she rationalizes that violence is the only language that these people will understand. The boys head to Latvia to looking for Carly. Bucky stays back because as they're walking, he recognizes a Wakandan tracking device. He follows a couple of them until he ends up in an alley and comes face to face with Io, who is a member of the Wakandan Dora Milaja, and she's here. She says that she's here for Zemo, and that's the end.
That's the end of the
So,
episode. You mentioned Power Broker being the name of this episode and also the name of this like ominous big bad that we still haven't actually met. If this were a recap on the
yes,
SnarkSquad, like an actual like written recap, there would have been so many stars awarded for
yes,
people saying the title. Really incredible stuff.
yes. If you don't know, if you're not aware, in our written recaps, we give out like shiny, sparkly stars to people who say the title of the episode in the thing because it's like a moment. And there were so many mentions of the Power Broker. In fact, when I was doing my recap, I was like, I got all this way without mentioning this guy when the episode mentions him like every other sentence. So,
Incredible.
yes, so many sparkly stars. But since I did the recap, I get to ask the question this week and you get to answer it first. So, did you like it? Did you like this episode?
I mean, it feels like we're still in this same boat though with every episode of the show, which is that like yeah, it was fine. This episode was so heavy on the exposition and was very, to me this episode was basically like, hey, you remember Civil War, right? Well, just in case, every scene is going to be some sort of either recap or reference to Civil War, which is fine. This episode, I don't feel particularly differently about this episode than I have about any of the previous ones, except that I do feel, well, no, this one I enjoyed more than previous episodes just because more happened, and it feels like we are about to get into stuff happening. Like now I'm like, aha, now we've got all of the pieces in place. Mostly this episode made me feel like, I mean, again, you know, we talk about WandaVision every week. We're probably going to keep doing it until this is over. But like, the thing about WandaVision is that it made such excellent use of every minute of those 6 hours. And my current feeling at the halfway mark is that this should have been a movie. This should not have been a TV show. This should have been a movie. Maybe a long one, maybe like a 2.5 hour movie, but like a movie nonetheless. I don't think that this needed 6 whole hours. We'll see. Maybe we're going to get to these next 3 episodes and be like, oh, no, you needed 6 hours. You just paced them wrong. I don't know. But my current feeling at the halfway mark is this feels like these 3 hours feels like we could have tightened that up a little bit.
I agree 100%. And it's so funny because after I finished watching the episode, I was literally sitting on my couch thinking about this. And because we just this past weekend recorded our podcast episode for WandaVision.
Mm-hmm.
So that conversation is like really fresh in my mind. And we were talking a lot about the format and the use of the time. And so I was thinking that like literally in our shared brain, the same thought like passed. And I was like, it doesn't feel like it needs all of these hours. It feels like it could have been a movie so far. And you're right, maybe in the bottom half we'll feel like, no, it needed all of this time. But if that's the case, it is poorly paced, because these first 3 episodes could have been tightened so much. And this is the halfway point for the season. And it feels like we just got through the introduction, where this should be the point where we're like really in the thick of things, or, starting on that kind of like, declining action or something along those lines, where we're just like kind of, I don't know, it still feels like introduction. I mean, we just got introduced to the power broker, really. And it feels like that's going to be, I think, some major point of this story. So I feel like there was some unevenness in the first 2 episodes that calmed down here. Like some of the banter calmed down. Some of that like jokey stuff, like it was sprinkled in here in ways that I was more appreciated. Like there are moments that I was like, haha, a moment of levity. That was funny. Where in the last episode, I was like, calm down, guys. Like this is too much. So all of that unevenness across these first 3 episodes has really left me feeling also like, yes, this is fine. I mean, the production quality is there. The acting is there. This is an MCU thing, and it's got a lot of cool callbacks, but am I loving it? No. I'm not loving it.
Yes. I feel it still feels, I mean, it feels like any of the, I don't know, more middling MCU things. Like that's the thing too, like with these like did you like it questions that feel tricky to me, because I don't actively dislike this. I don't, and if I, we both just finished our massive rewatch projects to prepare for that WandaVision podcast. And like, I don't know, I feel like the next time I do something like that, I wouldn't be like, oh, definitely want to skip Falcon and the Winter Soldier. I mean, we'll see what happens in the next half of it. But like, I wouldn't be like, oh man, my current feeling isn't, oh, I never want to watch this again. But it's also like, when there are so many better things that I,
Yes.
that I am also
If I were
comparing it
doing
against.
a complete rewatch, like I wouldn't skip it. But if I were doing a highlight reel,
Correct.
I would not watch this.
Correct.
I would not.
Yes.
This
Yes.
is not.
That's what I was trying to get at. Yeah. Is that thing, like in the way that, something that we talked about quite a bit while we were rewatching, is that like you have mostly just watched those things in that like big project, first for the podcast originally, and then now, like there are a handful of things that I have seen many times. I mean, at least there are quite a few things that I have seen more than once, and then a handful that I have now seen like many times. This is this is something that I my current feeling is that I would only ever rewatch it in the context of a larger MCU project. The Incredible Hulk is the only thing that I skipped. That's the only skippable entry so far. So it's not that, but also I don't know.
In a lot of ways, there are things here that should totally be my jam, because there was like an almost like spy-like espionage feeling to this that I really enjoy, and so that should like be something that hooks me. But also, this reminded me a lot of why this is also something that was like starting almost with negative points, and it's because I really don't like Civil War. I really don't like it. And so this is like the villain from Civil War. Remember Sharon? And that she's a Carter? And I'm just like, this is all stuff I don't like.
You're reminding me of MCU low points.
Yes, for me personally. So that's one thing. But I did like sort of like the spy vibes of it all.
Yes. Yeah. Yes, the spy vibes of it all. And like when I saw the trailers for this, I was actually kind of excited. I mean, again, my feelings about it were mostly just like, I'm gonna watch it just because. But the first trailer, I was like, oh, okay, there are like vibes here that I am interested in a way that I wasn't when the thing was just announced. When like the idea of the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, I was like, whatever. But the trailer, I was like, oh, okay. And this is the first episode where it feels like I am being like any of that has been delivered. Like none of that was present in the first 2 episodes. We are now starting to see that come in, but yeah.
Well, I took like a few things that we could talk about, but because we've already mentioned her a couple times, like you started with, I have feelings. Let's talk about Sharon.
Yeah. Okay. So here's I have feelings. First of all, if they indicate at any point in the next 3 episodes that Sharon didn't get blipped, I'm gonna lose my fucking mind. Cap was not blipped. Cap was back, in the like, he was an Avenger. He was a proper, no longer on the run Avenger for 5
Mhm.
fucking years. I swear to God. I don't remember if she was on. They had that like whole list. They showed a bunch of people. I wasn't really paying attention. And so like my immediate reaction was like I was confused about the timeline for a second, and I was like, what the hell? How have you not been? But like it registered in my brain that there were several years between Civil War and Infinity War, right? So like presumably in that window, that when they were all on the run, like Cap was in, the whole thing in Infinity War is that like he has his dramatic appearance in the train station because he has been in hiding for being a criminal, being an international criminal, and so everybody who
Yes.
was working with him, also a criminal now, don't really understand why they didn't loop Sharon into their little, like, mini, they're like Avengers ex-con sort of situation that they had going on. Like the Black Widow, when they pick up Wanda, there is this whole thing where Scarlet, sorry, Scarlet Witch, Black Widow, everything is like merging all the names in my head. Uh, where Black Widow is admonishing Wanda for like having not like checking in at sort of the right intervals, like stay close, lay low, check in, whatever. There's like that little exchange. So first of all, the fact that Sharon was not part of whatever the hell that was seems like a little bit of like, wow, fuck you, Steve,
Yeah.
on
Yeah.
that. But also, yeah, I just yeah, it took me a second. It took me a second to like register and remember that that was a thing when she was first describing her situation. Assuming she did get blipped, fine, okay. But still, I don't know. Like, I feel like that. Why was this not like what are the circumstances under which Bucky is getting like got pardoned
Mhm.
post blip, and
Mhm.
like how and why was this inaccessible to Sharon? I don't know. I just like there are things about this that are not adding up in my head, and I don't like
Yes.
it.
Yep. The chat has got some theories here. Uh I thought Sharon was going to betray them because the femme fatale trope. She did give big vibes where I was like, something's off. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and part of it, I was very like, I understood. Again, I would be salty too if I were the only one who was not pardoned, and I couldn't. She says, I can't talk to my dad. I can never go back home. Like big salt vibes there. But also the way that she was like interacting with them also made me feel like she was on the bad side. So she doesn't like betray them in this episode, but if down the line we found out that she was like double crossing them in any way, I would not be surprised.
Yeah. Also to the chat, like this did not even occur to me, but like the idea possibly a double agent because her whole her anti superhero stance felt a bit forced to me. Yes, I agree with that. Did not have the thought myself while watching it, but I do definitely agree with that sort of read. And I'm now like, oh, that actually does make a ton of sense. So at this point, I am in fact now hoping that she is actually still in shield, sword, whatever whatever it is, that wherever she would be in the current state of like superhero spy people, but she's just like deep cover. That's the deal, is that they're, that they have her officially, you are a convict, and that's, you are not, or not you are wanted, you are a wanted criminal or whatever, and we're going to leave that as your status,
Mhm.
so that you can go do undercover shit in the crime city.
Yeah.
I guess.
The fictional Marvel crime city.
Yes.
Essentially, if you're setting up that there's such a big bad, the power brokers, this whole thing there, like it would make sense that Shield or Sword or whoever would have a presence there, like deep undercover. So I like that.
Yeah, I do too. I hope
Especially
I hope that that's true.
And because it really did feel out of, I mean, again, I understand why she would be mad if this were the case, but there were certain things that felt like really like exaggerated or out of character, even to the point where Bucky is like, wow, she's awful now. And for like to call out that moment, which is pretty much what I was feeling as the audience too, like, oh no, what
Yes.
happened? I would love it if she were like deep undercover.
Uh-huh. Yes. Yeah. Because as this episode presented it, I was not happy with this sort of general turn and presentation of Sharon, both in terms of like larger, I have questions about how it would have gotten to this point in the first place, and also in terms of just like I mean, she was kind of a nothing character in like the bits that we have seen of her, but to the little degree that there was something there, it is profoundly opposite to this thing. And this thing only makes sense if she was like, this is the thing, her like like the plot beats, like the events, the sequence of events that lead her to this point only make sense if she was blipped, but being this level of jaded and angry only makes sense if she wasn't blipped, like this sort of personality shift
Yeah.
would only track to me if she lived through the 5 post-apocalyptic years.
Yeah.
But like the plot events that she is
Yeah.
describing would not have made sense, yeah, in that context. So I'm hoping that it's actually a deep cover situation.
Sharon wasn't like a pretty nothing character in the grand scheme of things until they put the last name Carter on her, right? And because in that case, they're making her a bigger deal than she was shown screen time wise. And also, you're loading a bunch of significance into this character because our character of Captain America fell in love with that girl and never forgot about like her aunt, and to the point where like he visited her while she was old, and he like always carried around her picture like he was super in love. She mattered this much to him that he went back in time to live a life with her, and you're going to tell me that he's just going to forget about her niece
Yeah.
that he kissed? No, doesn't track. He did
Absolutely not.
not. He did not forget. Captain America would not forget.
Yes. Not my
Uh,
Captain America.
okay, so any other thoughts on Sharon? Yeah.
I guess I didn't have that many thoughts. I just had strong thoughts. Strong feelings rather than feelings were intense but small in number.
The other person that, I mean, we knew he was coming, but Zemo is like, back in the fold here, and kind of doing his thing with our main characters, and he's very much, like you said, what we expect. Like right out of the gate, he's like kind of messing with Bucky, and he's doing things to help them, but in a very villainesque way. So
Yeah,
how'd you
classic when you work to have the villain be on your side, they're always,
Mhm.
oh, you.
How'd you feel about it? Did you like it?
Mostly I enjoyed, in the context of this episode, I enjoyed it. Like I feel like and you mentioned this before, that like well acted. Like I feel like that actor, fantastic job in general, just like in playing this role and in playing that very specific kind of part. Like that is a role that we during our MCU rewatch project talked about this a lot, with like the ways in which Loki only works because of Tom Hiddleston as an actor. That like that
Yes.
character is like a really tricky, for me personally, that type of character is a tricky thing for me to get into, and
Mhm.
so I feel like he played it well. I Again, there are like weird retconny problems with this episode, because his whole thing in Civil War is absolutely in no way reliant on like poverty. And certainly there are things that he does that do imply resources. His whole thing, definitely, you need some measure of resources to travel in the way that he does. However, there are some things about the way that he describes all of that that make this level of like generational wealth and power really not track with like quite the guy that he was. Like their whole thing of, oh, we're just gonna go, like we're gonna go be on the outskirts of Sokovia, or I'm during Ultron. And
Mhm.
then, but then, you know, the city got lifted up and everything, right? Like that's Zemo's whole thing in Civil War, to recap, was that during Ultron, during Age of Ultron, when they lifted the city, when the Avengers didn't fucking do it, when Ultron lifted the city up, there was debris, and that like he and his family had gotten out of the city. They were like on the outskirts of the city, but they basically everyone, his father, wife, and child were all crushed by, I don't know, either the city falling back down or something in all of that, in spite of not actually being in the city that got lifted up or whatever. They would, I don't understand why these people wouldn't have like left. Like why these people would have been there if they have the kind of resources that this episode is suggesting to me, that not is blatantly showing me that this man has access to. Like something about that just does not add up to me. And that was kind of annoying. Just as like a like really really weird, yeah, just from like a retconning perspective, that I was like, this, you're doing something here that is adding a level of inconsistency. Now it is like, it's for a small enough character, it's for like a minor enough side like thing that we're not talking about, you know, retconning Steve Rogers in this kind
Right.
of way. Like that would be like a serious problem. It was mostly just distracting.
Yes. Yeah, it was distracting to me because yes, I did not get those vibes like super rich man off of Ultron, but also like you would think in the way that they were after him as a villain and like investigating him, that it would have come up that he was
Right.
like a Sokovian royalty, and for them to be like, you are, like, that didn't track to me at all. Like that feels like something that they would know as part of their intel, or even in like the succeeding years, like after you arrested this man, you would think that it'd be like Sokovian royalty, you know,
Yes.
Baron Zemo got arrested today, and they'd be like, oh. So for them to like never know and it come out now, that's the point that I was like kind of distracted by. Like,
Like,
you
okay.
guys would know this. Maybe we didn't know this, but you guys would know this. This would
Yes.
not be a surprise to you.
Yes, there's absolutely no way that that they would not have figured this out yet.
Yes.
I also in the chat somebody says like, where was his butler when he was trying to kill the Avenger? This butler who like was on standby, I guess, like ready and waiting for his call. So yeah, I just have
That
questions.
whole thing was also sort of like weird and out of place. Like, I don't know what the point of that was, except for me to look at that man and be like, somebody get that man a retirement plan. Like, he shouldn't be doing anything right now. He was like shuffling along on this plane, like so slowly. I was like, why'd you bring this man out of retirement?
Yes, and especially, and like, why did you bring this man out of retirement? And also, like in the way in which they are retconning in all of this wealth or whatever. Like, he didn't need to be there. You know, like, fine, Zemo just has all this money, and he like, you know, is chartering a plane and whatever. Like, I just introducing this man then distracted me with questions of like, wait, okay, but where did you come from, and what have you been doing in while Zemo has been in prison, and
Yeah.
especially since like the we are told in Civil War that he has no one left. So in theory, the like, who have you been like being a butler to? Like, I just don't, I don't get it. I just, yeah, I have questions, and I didn't need to be left asking these questions because he has like two lines that were unnecessary. For like, the only reason they're there is so we can be like, ah, yes, he is rich, but like, they're on a private plane. I get it. He's rich.
Yeah.
Point made.
uh, Chat is pointing out that they're retconning to move his character closer to the comic characterization, which, yes, it feels like
Mm,
they essentially, because they had him wearing sort of like his mask that he wears in the comics. So it's clear that they were trying to tie those things um, but also I don't think that they did it very gracefully at all. It was very like, we talked about WandaVision, so we talked about the ways that they kind of moved her character more towards like the magic, the Scarlet Witch sort of things, which was different than what they initially told us about the Mind Stone. But
Mm-hmm.
they did it in a way where they kept all of the information that they told us and then just expanded on it, right? This didn't feel that way. This felt like, and the way that they presented wasn't expanding on it. It was literally like, we didn't know you were rich. Yuck, 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 yuck. And
Uh-huh.
it was
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
like, why are
Uh-huh.
you doing it this way?
Yes. Well, yes, 100%. Yeah, the giving him a title especially like was part of it, where it's like there are ways in which that somebody can be secretly wealthy, but that's not what they were doing with this like this. They were like, no man, this man is like opulently and like known to people because he has a fucking title, wealthy. So yeah, yeah, if you are going to do this kind of thing where you want new details that are of dubious consistency with past details, you need to find a way to integrate them that feels like properly additive. Which yeah, like that yes, everything with the Mind Stone was great because it was like purely additive. They said okay, like yes, and it was like good improv, right? Like yes
Yes,
and, as
yes,
opposed to whereas
yes.
this is no but. I don't know. Meh.
So in the chat, as much as it is bad retcon, I think this Zemo is more interesting than Civil War Zemo, which is fair. Yeah, I don't know that I can separate it out that way. It's still bothering me that we have two Zemos, but this
Right.
idea of like Baron Zemo with his like opulent wealth, sure, that's fun, I guess.
Why not?
The other new old face or addition that we saw was Io. And so I don't know, did we see any of this in any of the promotional stuff? Again, I
No,
never watch
I don't think
promotional
so.
stuff.
Or not. I
Okay.
didn't see any of it, any of the
Okay.
promotional stuff.
So introduce, and did you, when you saw the little the bead, did you immediately think Wakandan?
Yes, yes. I clocked the beat I clocked just because, I would not have if I hadn't just rewatched everything, to be
Yes.
clear. Like
Yes.
that is 100% essential to why I did connect it. It helped though that they mentioned it at the top of the episode too, or like that was part of, when Sam was freaking out at Bucky, he interjects two whole lines about and Wakanda hates this man. Remember that Wakanda hates this man, okay?
Yeah.
I'm like, all right. Noted.
We can't break out of jail. Wakanda hates him. Like, okay. It did
Yes.
take me a second. He finds two. So the first one, the reason that it took me a second was because we had watched an explosion, like Carly's explosion, and it was beeping. So I was like, is this a bomb? But
Mm.
then by the time he finds the second one, I was like, oh, I see. Any feelings about like the crossover or this character coming in to this story?
Not really. I mean, I feel like at this point we don't know enough to like this is too soon for me to have strong feelings. Like maybe next week I will develop more feelings. It felt extremely in keeping with everything else that this episode was. It was like one last remember Civil War note to end the episode on. But yeah, that was Sam's. The Wakandans hate him. He killed King T'Chaka. Do you think they forgot? No, they didn't forget. Like
Yes.
so much time expended on Wakanda specifically by Sam. Anyway, yeah, it was another like here's the thing. It feels like all of these things are going to do like they are. The universe is so big now that it is a thing that all of these properties are gonna include sort of guest appearances and cameos and stuff from characters who go elsewhere. Like that's the whole thing. But this episode felt, or at least that introduction in particular at this point feels like more clunky than like than like, oh, here's a fun neat thing. Again, WandaVision, the introduction, like when Darcy appears, like it's the it was just handled so much better.
Mhm.
I don't know.
Yeah. The equivalent would be, okay, Darcy appears and she says, astrophysics is my sort of like specialty or whatever, but she doesn't go, I helped Thor and Jane and in this, in a way that, like it just was like, here she is, oh my gosh, oh, she's a PhD astrophysics, and it let us do the heavy lifting. Where here, I think if you remove all of Sam's lines at the top of the episode and just let this person show up and let us go, oh crap, Kazimo's out and they hate, like if we do
Right.
that connecting, it's so much more fun than like pointing it out. And then when you get to the end of the episode, it's like, okay, I see what you did there. I would have
Yes.
rather connected those dots,
Yes, yes, yeah. Because this episode spent so much time on all of that exposition. Yes, I think that you're right. I think that there are a number of things in this episode that they could have just allowed to happen. And like I get it. I get that there is so much here and that these things do need to allow for audiences to watch, this thing without having seen all every movie that came before it. And like they're trying to be self-contained units, but again, WandaVision managed to do a lot of that without those explanations. Like it was like that was additional information that was there. If you had it, it was cool and you could enjoy it, but it wasn't like we did not need to discuss Thor for Darcy to be relevant. All we needed to know is that Darcy has a PhD in astrophysics, and that's all they told us. Like that's
Mm-hmm.
it. That's all you need to know. This woman, PhD, astrophysics. Cool, great. Uh, but like for us, we're like, oh man, I know this whole. It's like
Yes.
it's fun stuff that's there if you have it, but it is not strictly necessary to following the story. And I think to your point not giving the audience or their like they were not giving us enough credit, and that I don't think that you did need a lot of the explanation that they were giving us in this episode, that like a lot of it in the context of this thing, it's just like uh, here is this woman is a spy, like I don't know, like they were giving
Yeah.
us a lot of extra information to make sure we understood that these things were significant, but they are only fun bits of like significant, like that significance only really carries weight if it can carry that weight on its own. If you have to tell me that this is
Yeah.
significant,
Was it fun?
was
I don't
it?
know.
Yeah, was it? I don't know. Yeah.
Even if you want to do that exposition, I think it happens so much better not at the top of this episode. Everything happens without that. She shows up and she says, "I'm here for Zemo," and in the next episode, she can give us a bunch of that. She can say, we didn't forget. We will never forget what he did to our king." And then you get that information in a way that is a lot more natural than just like the
Sam,
wink and the
why
nod.
the fuck it was Wakanda's feelings, like why was that so central to Sam's complaint there? Like truly a lot.
Argument,
Yeah.
yes. When
Yes.
it should have just been, "This is against the law. This is a bad man. We
But
can't do this."
right, we are already like acting outside. We are outside of
Yes.
the rules here, breaking breaking this felon out of a prison or whatever. Like this is much more serious. Um,
Yeah.
I did notice. Somebody in the chat said my brother pointed out that her black attire might be a sign of mourning Black Panther. Did not notice that on my own, but oh man.
Nope.
So
We'll
just
cry.
yep.
We'll cry immediately.
No.
Uh-huh. I mean, apart from the clunkiness of the introduction, I got like excited because I love Black Panther. I
Mhm.
love anything that has to do with Wakanda. I love it so much more than both Falcon and the Winter
Right,
Soldier.
yes.
So I was like, "Yay, hooray, look at this thing." And in my, where I would like this to go is that same sort of thing where I forget who. Oh, when they meet Sharon and she's like, I hate Zemo, and they're like, wait, listen to what we're doing, and she's like, okay, I get it. Like
Uh-huh.
I would like that same thing to play out where they're like, wait, listen, there are like more super soldiers out, and she joins the team. I
Mm-hmm.
would love to see her join the team
Mm-hmm.
until the end. Like, and her whole thing will probably be like, but afterwards, you give them to us. Like,
Mm-hmm.
yes, good deal.
Mm-hmm.
But I would love to see her fighting alongside Bucky, especially because they have so many super soldiers to take out that you almost have to assemble a team this way. And I want her to be part of it so bad.
Yes. Yes. Yes, I same 100%. Also, very much hope she's part of the team, and that that she doesn't wind up being like functionally equivalent to Captain America, right? Like that's the thing, like because those are the two options here, right? Like either she's going to join the team, and stay with him until he's completed this thing, and then try to take him back to Wakanda, or she's becomes a third entity, trying to like trying to undermine um, Sam and Bucky, and like that would feel considerably less fun to me. It it does suggest though that now that I'm thinking about it again, thinking about the universe as we understand it, who knows what they're gonna retcon, like how, when, where, whatever. But like at this point in time, like Black Panther, like he is in universe. Her presence suggests to me that he is in universe already dead, because his whole thing at the end of Civil War was like, oh, I'm not gonna like be obsessed with vengeance. You are frozen. Oh, now you're unfrozen. Okay. I was like, oh no. I I stretched that thought out a lot because you were frozen.
I was like, when I joined back in and you were just saying I was frozen, I was like, I've been frozen for a second. Like, what?
No,
But I'm
this
glad
was
that was
me.
really well timed.
Thank you. Thank you. So yeah, I don't know. Whatever. Well, we shall see. We shall see where she goes, and what they do with all of that. I also, in much the same way as our current working theories about Sharon, I hope they're true. That's how I feel. That's how I feel about AO as well. That there's a way that I would like this to play out, and ways that I
Yeah.
don't want this to play out. So
Yes.
choose wisely. Choose the right one.
Are you ready? We need theme music. We're gonna come up with a little jingle, and it's for your blip poli sci corner. Do 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 do. Blip poli sci. All right, girl.
Oh
Any
man.
additional thoughts that this episode gave you? I mean, we did get the whole commercial propaganda thing at the beginning,
Uh-huh.
which just basically confirmed what we thought this council or whatever this group was doing. But did get to see like the camps that these people are living in, and this entire idea that they're being kept from resources, which is what the flag smashers are
Right.
supposed to be doing, is kind of like, what we said, Robin Hooding, taking back these resources and giving them out to the camps, even though Carly kind of escalates things in this episode by blowing things up.
That reminded me a lot of in Black Panther when Killmonger kills his girlfriend, because
Yes.
it's like the whole thing with like Killmonger, absolutely he's in the like he's number one on the list of villains who have a point.
Mhm.
And like truly his whole thing is right. Even the hero, even Black Panther, is like, this man has a point. So like 100%, but pretty early on in the movie they have him kill his girlfriend, and it truly feels like, just so we all understand, this man is the bad guy, don't you
Right.
forget, right? And like that, it felt very much like that, where, which I don't, this isn't a commentary on like good, bad, whatever, like it's just, it's funny because it reminded me of that same sort of thing of these villains. That is one good thing that I'm taking away from this, is that they're going to be a good addition to our running listicles.
Yes.
They
Yes.
are These villains are also going to have a good spot on our villains who have a point. Everything Carly says, I'm like, yeah, you're right.
That's true. Yeah, that does suck.
No lies detected here. But also, she's gonna do a bunch of extra murders, extra and unnecessary murders, so that we don't
Yeah.
forget that, that her side is the villains.
It was interesting too because we've talked in last episode about like where they will land, and we were like they'll be gray, they or whatnot. But this episode then does like a bunch of work to be like, no, she's like right. She's this isn't great. She's doing good. It
Uh-huh.
outside of the law, which is sort of like a thing in this episode anyway. Like those who are doing good outside. Machiavelli is like quoted in this, so it's like a whole thing about
Uh-huh.
doing good outside of the law or like that, necessary evil or whatnot. But then she goes and blows up the building, and I'm like, why'd you just show me all of that?
Remember which kind of character she is.
I was like, okay, I guess.
Yes. I in the chat, it seemed really out of character for a prospective teacher to just murder a building full of people because villain.
Right.
Which, yeah, that was a choice. That was a choice that they had her right after being like, "Oh man, I really wish that I could teach the kids, and maybe when this is all over, you'll get to teach kids." Although, even that bit where he's like, "Maybe when this is done, you can be a teacher," and like her face is one of clearly like, nah, dude,
No.
that's not that life is no longer
Mhm.
in the cards for me. Like that has been taken
Yeah.
off the table.
Yeah.
So
It's weird though too because the last thing that she says the guard before she murders him is basically just like, "Don't you get it? We're just fighting for our lives." But then she goes the extra step where it's like, "You're not just fighting for your life here."
right,
Like okay. Um yeah, it was a little weird, but I get it, I guess.
yeah. Yes, yes. Yeah, I get what it is doing in the story. I don't have particularly strong feelings in terms of like that being a particularly good or bad choice. It's just it was a choice, and I noticed it. Uh, I don't feel villains who have a point are always framed to be evil in ways that actively don't make sense slash help their cause, and it's so frustrating. I to me it still feels too early to tell like how much that is necessarily going to be the case here. I definitely like get the vibes of that because yes, by being sort of aggressively violent in this way, there is an element of, oh, you're not gonna uh you are positioning your cause as being like a cause of murderers or whatever. I think that is oof, on this blip poly, this is like less blip poli sci and like more broad. I think it does actually make a certain kind of sense to me, in terms of like the kind of rallying that they want to do, given the state of the world of this world of this universe. I and their whole thing of they are trying to help all of these people who have been displaced post blip. Uh, the extremism to me does not feel like inherently or obviously contrary to their cause. Like I can see
Yeah.
how sitting here, like removed from it, it feels that way. It doesn't necessarily. But I can also see a way in which that would not be alienating to people, and that would be a thing where we're like of like yes, they are here for us, especially since the GRC seems so obviously and patently bad, that
Mhm.
like I don't know, blowing up GRC buildings doesn't to me really track as like it's we know it's evil, right? Like it's clear we're given the context of there were still people in there, like what yes, that is clearly meant to be a bad thing, uh, but only because there are still people in there, right? Like that's really that the other guy was there to remind us that she killed a bunch of people when she blew up that building. But like if all the people were out blowing up a GRC building, I don't know, man.
Do it.
I'm not convinced that would be a bad thing.
Mhm.
If it weren't for the murder is what is the bad thing. So yeah, I don't know. I'm rambling
This
a little
this
now.
show But the show has like the points are there, the storylines are there. It's almost like the integration of them that is like falling a little bit or
Yeah.
failing a little bit. So even on this thing, like I see that as a progression of Carly's characterization. But some of this humanizing stuff would have better fit in episode 1, and in episode 3 she's blowing up a building. But we get it all in one episode. And
Yes.
so it's kind of like whoa, 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 whoa. So it's all like the integration of the storytelling that they're doing that feels oddly placed, oddly paced. It almost seems a little out of order, honestly, the way that
Yeah.
they're packaging it. So again, I'm with you. It tracks that this person, this character would escalate in this way, considering especially that she just lost somebody really important to her in
Mm-hmm.
this camp and whatnot. So that all tracks. It was just sort of the presentation of it that I was like, man, you're going too fast, too much, too fast.
Uh-huh. Well, yeah, too much too fast, and then other places where it was just like weirdly slow. And yes, the
Mhm.
pacing so far, I think that to me is really actually the problem with the show as a whole, is that the
Yes.
whole thing just feels really oddly placed. And it's not so much, and it's part of why, coming into these conversations, I keep being like, I don't really know, because it's not this thing where I have this list of, here are all of these specific like elements or moments or things that I think are bad, or that like I wish they wouldn't have done. I just, it's like, all of the pieces are there. I just want to like slightly rearrange them,
Yes.
I just want
Yes.
to move them around a little bit. It's more work than I would ever do, but the idea of like taking the whole like 6 hours and just like cutting it up and like like don't take anything out, just like how to rearrange
Mhm.
what we've been given so far,
Yeah.
because it needs some rearranging.
Yes. Anything else? Any other thoughts you have on this episode?
um no, not really. I was thinking about the blip poli sci thing, and all of my thoughts are things that we actually covered in the context of other stuff. The
Mhm.
the presence of the camps. That's a pretty big one. Um, I I am so confused about Zemo's family and employees, uh, which we talked about in the specific confines of them, but like there's broader like blip questions of just, okay, like I'm curious. Okay, wait, sorry. So okay, imagine you like work for some super rich family and they all get blipped and you didn't. And so for the last, okay, this is the kind of person who 100% I'd be a flag smasher too, right? I work for some rich family, they all blip away, but I don't. Well, I guess I fucking live in their house now. I guess their mansion is mine now. Then they fucking
Uh-huh.
come back and now
Uh-huh.
I'm the help
And they
again.
want me to
Absolutely
not
not.
only move out of this house, but work for
But
them
work for
again?
them? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I'm gonna go smash a flag. Uh, go help Curly blow up a building.
Especially
Oh,
when they come back and they find out that been using their house and their resources, like
right.
whatever.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
Mm. Sold all their art.
Yes. Okay. Right. So like what happens with shit like that? Yeah. Yes. The implication that I get from the presence of the camps is that the policy was that anything you that like it's there is something. It is a little bit inconsistent to me, because the camps, the idea of these displacement camps in this episode as they were presented, kind of suggest that what happens is that anything that you had sort of squatted or claimed in the past 5 years, you lose now that
Mm.
its original owners have come back. But I'm not sure how this tracks with episode 1 and Sam's whole plot line in episode 1. I'm a little bit confused about the alignment of those two things. I haven't given this like this is the thought that I'm having right now. So maybe if I think about it more, it'll like make sense and line up in my head. But I'm not 100% sure about that.
For next week, do
Yeah.
do do
For
do
next week's
do.
next week's Lit
With
Poli
poli
Sci,
sci.
I will revisit this thought and we'll see. Or maybe we'll get more information next week that helps clarify my thoughts on this.
I know we were wrapping up, but in the chat, someone brought up Sam's little check-ins with Bucky throughout this and the awareness of mental health. It seems to be a continuing thread through the series, which reminded me that we really didn't talk a lot about Bucky and Sam.
Oh, the Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Oh,
Yes, those two
okay,
people.
yeah,
But
sure.
I will say, I mean, I did see that what's his name, Zemo did like get into Bucky's head like immediately. But
Mhm.
this entire idea of him having to act like the Winter Soldier or whatnot, and what that means, especially because what they show us immediately, like first, is like he's in therapy, like coming to terms with everything that he did and trying to like work out what it means for him to have been that person, and then to bring us here and be like, act like that person again. Like, yeah, man, I had immediate feelings for Bucky in
Mhm.
that situation, especially seeing him like jump into it so quickly and just being like, oh no, baby, call your therapist, let her know that you need help and support. So I thought that that portion of it was well done. And it made I keep wanting to call him Zumo. Is it Zemo? I've said
Zemo.
this like 17. Zemo. It made him even more nefarious in and there was that one scene, right, where we get Zemo in jail and he's saying the words to Bucky on the outside, and it's like a direct mirror of the scene where Bucky is in that like container and Zemo is telling him the words from the outside. So you get that moment of like, oh man, and it just seems so like dark and nefarious. So I appreciated like that dynamic between them two.
Mm-hmm. And the little moment of Sam, yes, like to this comment too, of Sam sort of like, you know, being like, hey, are you okay? Are you good?
Yeah.
That was also very nice for, you know, the way in which this is this duo that is the title of the whole show or whatever. Like their common ground was really just that they had a friend in common. They had the same best friend, but like
Mhm.
they never seemed that we never saw them have a particularly strong relationship, and like at this point really now their tie is grieving the same best friend, I guess. So like stuff like that to me is much more effective than a lot of the like the excessive banter of the last episode of like, look,
Yes.
they can crack jokes together. That kind of thing is like, okay, yes. Seeing that happen, I become more invested in the idea that these two are actually becoming good friends, and their
Even the
partnership
moment
is
where he's
meaningful.
they're like talking about the art that Sharon has stolen or is selling, and like Sam is Googling it. And he's like, what does Google say? Like that little humor was so cute, opposed to like the forced like banter, or the forced therapy session looking at each other's eyes. Like there's ways to integrate that better than they did in episode 2. And I think in episode 3, we do see that better integration.
Yes, 100% agree. Okay,
All righty.
now we've said all the things, I think.
I think so. We talked about the Falcon and the Winter Soldier.
Yes, we forgot about the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, but now that we have discussed the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, we can call it. Thank you guys for joining us again. Thanks for sticking with this show and coming to hang out with us as we try to find interesting things to talk about. We're halfway there. We're halfway there.
Yeah.
Hopefully everything is really picking up now, and next time there will be many things. If not, I'm just gonna come and talk to you guys about Blip Poli Sci for an hour. We'll see. We'll see what happens.